Good day traders, welcome to this week's RMD Weekly Market Overview. Last week saw some exciting price action with many markets breaking out of important levels. And for our viewers who watched our videos, you would have been in a good position to take advantage of these moves. This week we will look at where the markets might go next and how to best prepare for these moves in advance. I'm going to let the disclaimer roll and I will see you in the charts. We are starting with the US dollar to South African rand. So last week saw a massive price reversal when price broke out of this falling wedge formation that we can see over here. And then we had a rally all the way up to the monthly pivot at the 1710, where we finally found some resistance. So at this stage, price is facing multiple facets of resistance. That includes the 100 daily moving average, which is also in this area, and also these diagonal levels of resistance. So the probability play here would likely be that we see price correct back towards this weekly pivot level, and that is at 1686, and this is also where it likely meet up with our 4-hour 200 SMA. If we can close above resistance at 1710 and also of course above this diagonal, it's possible that we will see price move higher towards our weekly R1 pivot at 1750 and possibly even this monthly R1 pivot at 1763. So if we close below major support, and initial support would be at this 1665 level, and that is where we find our 200 daily SMA, also this 4-hour 100 SMA, and possibly also where we would meet up with this 50 SMA on the 4-hour. Below that, we have our yearly R2 pivot, which is the major support at this stage. And if we close below that, of course, that will now reverse the trend again back towards a bearish outlook, and we can expect price to move even lower. We are moving on to the Euro USD. Last week saw price break out to the downside to below this diagonal support and also our monthly S1, and that took us to our target that we had at the August pivot at 1.162, and this is the area that we've identified over here. And at this stage, trend is now bearish with the monthly S1 at 1.176. Now becoming the area of resistance. And another area to watch is this weekly pivot that we have at 1.170, and that could be a potential area for a pullback, meaning any bearish price action from this level would potentially be a good short entry, taking price lower. So if price closes below this 1.157 level, and that is where our yearly R1 pivot is at, that will open up more bearish targets. That could include the area between 1.144 and 1.153. That is the weekly S1, S2 pivots. And the primary level here to keep an eye out for would be this support level at 1.149. Having a brief look at the economic calendar for this week, we have the European Central Bank President speaking later today. And of course, also on Wednesday, as we can see over here, that would be at 9:20. Then we have some unemployment claims on Thursday at 2:30, and manufacturing PMIs at 4 o'clock. And on Friday, we have non-pharmaceutical employment changes and unemployment rates also at 2:30. And we are now looking at a GBPUSD. Last week saw a break below this lower diagonal, leading price to our target at 1.272, where it made strong support from both the 100 as well as the 200 daily moving averages. So we are currently in the 4-hour time frame, but if we were to move to the daily time frame, we will see that we met up with this 200 as well as this 100 SMAs, where it then found some support. And at this stage, looking from a technical standpoint, there is still a lot of downside with bearish targets, including this weekly S2 pivot at 1.250, and then we also have our weekly S1 pivot at 1.261, and that's also close to some major horizontal support. So If we do see price close below the lows from last week, these are the targets to keep an eye out for. Just briefly moving back to the 4-hour time frame, we can see that we have this small consolidation, which would be key to keep an eye out for any price action or any breaks either lower or higher. Should we see a move higher, the initial area to look out for would be the weekly pivot at 1.279, or in between that and our monthly ES2 at 1.283. So when price moves back into this area, it's likely to find some resistance, and from there it can either correct back down, meaning price will move lower, or if we close above this and also above this 50 SMA on the 4-hour, it's possible that price will move higher towards this weekly R1 pivot at 1.291, and this will then also again reverse price higher to see that trend to reverse back to a more bullish standpoint. And moving on to the Australian dollar USD. Last week saw a bearish break from the diagonal, this is the lower diagonal, and that quickly took price down, smashing our conservative target, and only saw price find some support on the 100 daily moving average. And if we look on the daily time frame, we'll see that is exactly where price met some support, and the reason why these major moving averages is so important to keep an eye out and to keep in mind where they are located. And moving back to the 4-hour, so considering all this bearish momentum, it feels like it's very possible that price could head slightly lower towards this monthly ES2 pivot at 0.695, but it's also worth keeping a close eye on the current level as a pullback towards the weekly pivot at 0.711, and perhaps even slightly above that we have this major horizontal support line, which is now horizontal resistance. So this would then be an area to keep an eye out for a pullback over here. And should we see more bearish price action from this area, it's possible that we then will see our lower targets being reached. However, if we do get a close above this, the trend will possibly reverse more bullish again, and we will see the monthly S1 pivot at 0.717 tested, and perhaps even this breakout area where we will meet up with the 4-hour 200 SMA near 0.723. Moving on to the US 100, also known as the NASDAQ 100. Last week saw price form what appears to be a temporary bottom, with price just managing to close above the weekly pivot at 11,020. Strong resistance remains at the monthly S1 pivot at 11,250, and further bullish behavior can only be expected with a solid close above this level. In the scenario that we see price recover to at least the monthly pivot at 11,700, and that could only happen, of course, if we close above this monthly S1 pivot, and that would mean we can perhaps retest this monthly pivot at 11,700. However, if price fails to get above this monthly S1 pivot at 11,250, or perhaps at this 11,370 level where it meets up with the 200 SMA on the 4-hour. So if it rejects from this level and gets below this monthly S1 pivot level again, it's possible that we will move lower and retest these previous lows from last week, probably near the weekly S1 between 10,800 and this lower diagonal support now at 10,700. If price does break below that, the initial short targets would be this area between 10,391 and 10,450. And if that were to break, there is lots more downside, and price could even move as low as this 9,780 level, where it will possibly meet up with the 200 SMA on the daily. Now looking at the Brent crude oil, Brent crude is currently back in consolidation, and if we have learned anything from Brent crude's price behavior lately, is that a break from this consolidation will be followed by a very large move, as we've seen in the previous weeks. And the breakout levels to watch would be either a break below the monthly S2 at 41.40 or this horizontal resistance at $43. If it closes registered below this 4-hour 100 SMA, this is the blue line that we can see moving down here, and also currently on this lower diagonal, that could potentially sign an early bearish break, and that can then take us towards support, being a conservative target. Firstly, this 39.90 level would be a conservative bearish target if we have our break, of course, and that would be followed by a much larger target at about 57.80. That is where we'll meet up with the monthly S3. I'll show you that on the daily in a moment. And just looking at the other side, if we were to break above this $43 area, it's possible that we will see price move higher towards initially this $44 area, and that is close to the previous highs, and also where we see our 4-hour 200 SMA. And our ultimate bullish target, should price get above that, would be about 47 over here. And that is just a measured move based on previous volatility and the range of previous breakouts from consolidation. And just quickly moving to the daily time frame, we can see that those targets are at 37.80. This is the ultimate bearish target should we see a very aggressive breakdown, and we can see that is quite in line with previous moves from consolidation. So for 37.80 and also that 47 level where we have our monthly R1 pivot as a bullish target. And now looking at gold. Gold finally broke out of this large symmetrical triangle consolidation last week, and that then hit the first target at the monthly S1 pivot at 1,859. The full measured bearish target still remains much lower at 1,795, but that will require a price to close below this interim support or diagonal support at about 1,800 and let's make it 55 to 1,859. So we will need to close below this lower diagonal to see that full measured bearish target being met. Also, to consider some corrections or moves higher, if we close above this upper diagonal, and that would be in the area of about 1,870 to 1,875. That could take us to the weekly pivot at 1,888, and we can either then be rejected at this level, taking us back lower towards this 1,860 level or a monthly on pivot, or if we manage to close above that, it could take us all the way back to this breakdown level at 1,927, which is also our weekly R1 pivot level. And just quickly moving to the daily time frame, you can see that full bearish target over here at 1,793, and that is just a measured move based on that initial base from the symmetrical triangle measured down from the center point down. Finally, concluding this week's market overview by looking at Bitcoin. Bitcoin last week unable to close above this head and shoulders neckline that we discussed last week at 11,100. Also the area where it met resistance from our 4-hour 200 SMA, and that is where it got rejected, and currently prices is trading near the monthly S1 pivot at 11,625, and at this stage the 4-hour 200 as well as the 4-hour 100 SMAs would be the important price action indicators, with a close below the monthly S1 pivot likely to see a retest of this lower diagonal, and that will likely happen near this 10,250 area, whereas a close above the 4-hour 200 SMA possibly taking us firstly to this neckline area back at 11,100, and should we manage to clear that, that will open up the area between 11,560 and 11,650, and that is where we have our monthly pivot level. Just briefly looking at the daily time frame for some bigger picture perspective, we can see that we are now trading in also what appears to be a large consolidation, with price trying to find some direction. And as mentioned, the break above this diagonal would then potentially take us back to that area, whereas a break below the pivot will firstly take us towards this lower diagonal. And if that were to break, we have some additional support at the monthly SD pivot near 9,640 and 9,800, which was our previous lows. And yeah, a move below this symmetrical triangle would of course be more bearish in the medium term. As always, I trust you found this week's video valuable. Feel free to send us your feedback, as we would love to hear from you. And if you have not done so already, hit that subscribe button to be reminded as soon as we make new content live. Until next time, this is John Jacobs for RMD Trader. Trade smart and trade successful.